I'm Kaitlyn Bissonnette, State Field Crop Plant Pathologist and Assistant Extension Professor with the University of Missouri. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about some emerging field crop disease threats in Missouri. So I'm really going to focus on some emerging disease threats in corn because that's really where we're seeing a lot of damage in the last couple of years from some diseases that have moved into the state. And I'm really going to start off with one disease that we found last year, which is bacterial leaf streak. This is an especially important disease because it resembles gray leaf spot, which is an important disease that likes to show up in the lower canopy every year and moves up as we kind of approach that spray timing. What makes it different than gray leaf spot is the wavy margins that are around the lesions. As you can kind of see here, the lesions themselves are not rectangular like you typically see with gray leaf spot. But this disease is also wind-blown, so it blows into an area and generally follows inclement weather like hail damage or high winds. As the leaves are rubbing together, it provides some great wounds that allow the bacteria to invade the tissue. What we did find is last year, we confirmed bacterial leaf streak in 2 counties, Ray County and Sheridan County. There were some other fields where there were unconfirmed cases of bacterial leaf streak where it was potentially found, but all of these fields were fairly isolated. It was not widespread throughout the state. But this year, as we had a lot of inclement weather early on, a lot of rain and a lot of whipping winds early on, there's likely some bacterial leaf streak that did show up earlier in the season. Something to keep in mind also with this disease, as we continue to see it from year to year, it will build up in the residues and continue to show up year after year. So it's important to scout for this disease. And what we're really looking for are these necrotic lesions. So if you look, there's these necrotic elongated lesions that will start showing up as you're walking through your plots or through your field. And what you're looking for as you look down are kind of those long strings of dead lesion. And if you hold those leaves up to the light, you'll see on the right picture here, you can see that yellowing, and that's the bacteria that has started to invade those cells. And so that's really indicative of a bacterial infection that has started to occur and is invading through the leaves. Now, this is a little bit different than gray leaf spot, which is pretty characteristically rectangular. And so the left picture shows a little bit of that yellowing around the margins, but you can still see that rectangular lesion. And so it very easily follows those leaf veins, and that is a very characteristic gray leaf spot lesion. And the right-hand picture are those elongated rectangular lesions. The margins are very straight. They are not wavy. And that's the difference between bacterial leaf streak and gray leaf spot. Another major difference is when we cut through these lesions, when we are in the lab, we take that necrotic or that yellowed area, bacterial streaming. So all that bacteria is going to start moving out of that lesion into the liquid that we have on a slide. And so that is a diagnostic symptom that we have a bacterial disease and not a fungal disease. The most important takeaway is when you're out scouting, you're not going to want to apply a fungicide to control bacterial leaf streak because obviously it is a bacterial disease and not a fungal disease. And so that is something to keep in mind. If you're just not getting control from spraying for your gray leaf spot and it just keeps taking off, it may not be bacterial, it may not be gray leaf spot, it may in fact be bacterial leaf streak. So if you have any samples that you're just questioning either way, feel free to send them my way. Another major disease that I really want to emphasize some importance about here in the state of Missouri that we need to be out scouting for is tar spot on corn. This is caused by Phylochoromatus. It causes these small oval black raised spots that are circular to oval, and they can occur really anywhere on the plant, on the leaves, sheaths, husks, anywhere, and they can be surrounded by a tan or brown halo, but they don't have to be. And they can be present on both green, healthy tissue as well as brown or dead, dying tissue, so as it senesces later in the season. This disease actually has caused significant losses, especially in 2018 when we kind of had a wetter year in a lot of the Midwest. It is present in 9 states in the US, and so this is something that we really need to be on the lookout for, especially in the Corn Belt region. This has become a significant problem. What we're looking for, we can see anything ranging from a single stroma, so that's those black dots, it's called a stroma. We can see anything from one single stroma on a single leaf, all the way to leaves that are covered in black dots, all these black stroma that are covering the leaves. And when we zoom in on them, the picture in the lower right-hand corner, these black stroma do not break through the leaf surface. And so this is not a disease that really has a risk of drying out the crop, but it can cause a significant level of yield loss just based on loss of photosynthetic area. It's also absorbing a lot of other nutrients, and we have a lot left to learn about this disease as to why it's causing such high levels of yield loss. Now, I want to call some attention to what we were really looking at last season and where Missouri fits into this picture. Now, last October, on October 21st, I kind of set a challenge to my regional specialists that all of these states had confirmed tar spot as of last year, all that red across all the states. These are all counties that had scouted and confirmed tar spot. As you can see, Iowa had scouted and confirmed tar spot basically the entire border of Missouri. And so I posed a question as to who thought we didn't have tar spot in Missouri. And just based on some evidence that counties bordering on Illinois and Iowa had some history of tar spot, but we had yet to detect it here in the state. There was a high likelihood that we might find it in this year as compared to previous years, and that was 2019. And so on October 23rd, we sent out a scout to look in some of the northeast counties, and what we found is in Scotland County, in Lewis County, and in Clark County, we found tar spot. And so we have officially confirmed that tar spot is present in Missouri. However, we are seeing it at very, very low levels. These are pictures of what we found, single stroma on single leaves. So this means that what we're finding is very low incidence of tar spot in the state of Missouri. But that means it's here. It is moving into the area, and we need to be on the lookout, and we need to be watching for it and tracking its progress. Over the years, it had started originally in 2015 in Illinois and Indiana, in those dark red counties in those center areas. And it has moved out over the years. And so over time, we expect it to continue to progress across the state of Missouri. And so this is something that we need to continue to scout for and continue to highlight its progression and understand how much it is building up over time. And so scouting is the most important thing we can do here in Missouri. Now, it can look like some other diseases. This includes southern rust on corn. So as the season progresses, southern rust on corn starts to turn black or dark brown in color. But something that distinguishes it from tar spot is the fact that the pustules of southern rust will break open and through the leaf surface, which is different than tar spot. Tar spot obviously does not break through the leaf surface. So that is something to keep in mind as we look through, as we look at leaves and we look at husks and other tissues on the plant. Another thing that it might look like is common rust on corn. Common rust can be a little bit smaller in their pustule size, so it is something else that can be darker in color that can get confused with tar spot. Again, common rust also breaks through the leaf surface, so it is something that should be looked at a little more closely to make sure that did it break through the leaf surface? It's probably a rust. So what we're looking for are these black dots that have not broken through the leaf surface. Now, what are we really looking at as far as disease, and what are the conditions? 2018 was one of the worst years they saw for tar spot across the Midwest, and a lot of these conditions were optimal. So the 63 to 72 average monthly temperature, average daytime and nighttime temperature, that is, high relative humidity, lots of leaf wetness, foggy days, as well as a lot of rainfall. So much of the Midwest took a huge hit. Some fields reported up to 40% yield losses as a result of tar spot. This is a significant amount of damage can occur from this disease. The biggest problem that we're facing as researchers is the fact that we still have a lot to learn about this disease. What we have found as a result of the tar spot working group is that there are differences amongst hybrids. There's some ongoing research to look at what those hybrids might be that are more resilient and more resistant to this disease. What are the responses that fungicides might have? Those are being studied right now in some areas that are a little more established with tar spot. Missouri is not one of those areas because we don't have tar spot. We're keeping that fungicide work to those areas like Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin, but we're getting data back as to what fungicides might work better. There's also forecasting models that are starting to be developed, such as tar spotter. So an example of this, we looked at the first report here in Missouri as to what tar spotter might be doing to look at if conditions were right for tar spot to develop. And so what we see is there is a spike right here in the map that shows that there was a high risk for tar spot to develop in early September. And then that goes down a little bit, but it stays relatively high from about early September through the end of October. And so at some point during that time, tar spot developed, and then we started to observe it at the end of October. Even though it was only a few stroma on a few leaves, tar spot development occurred. Now, like I said, this is a huge project with a lot of people involved, and I'm not going to go into everybody that's involved here. This is the abbreviated list of who all is involved in that. But if you want more information about any of this, any of the emerging diseases in Missouri, please feel free to contact me. My information is here, or follow me on Twitter at KMBiss. Thank you.